Using timecode on set is a great start to synchronizing your audio and your video together. But here's the thing, it's not always perfect. In fact, it almost never is.
So let's take things up a notch and learn some pro techniques like how to make a time of day sync map. Basically what Avid calls auto sequence, when the camera was on to when the camera was not on or when it was not recording. This is going to allow us to perfectly line up the audio and video from a timeline view. Then we can dive into using some new features that were introduced in DaVinci Resolve 20.1 using AutoSync, but based on manual endpoints, we can choose to synchronize using in to end up with a very robust synced master clip that lives inside your media pool. To get set up for success in making a sync map in DaVinci Resolve, the first step is getting your media pool in order. Basically, place your video clips, your audio clips from your externally recorded audio in the same bin, and then set up your custom columns. So the 3 columns that make sense to me are going to be synced audio, start timecode, and endpoint. And if you're new to DaVinci Resolve, the way you set these up, you can just right-click in the bin column area, say customize columns, and then just, you might start actually by saying remove all fields if there's a lot there to start. Find these values, add them here. You can reorganize them with the 3-dot options menu. Just drag those. Maybe I want my endpoint above, my start time code above, hit save, and it's sort of dynamic there. Now, the reason this endpoint column is important to me is because what we're going to do to create a sync map is we're going to edit these down to a timeline. And if there's already an endpoint, someone had marked an endpoint, maybe I did, just playing around, I want to make sure I get all of this area before the endpoint edited to the timeline. And so this is an indication to me, hey, I actually probably need to clear the marks before I edit so that I get all the frames. And the way you do that in Resolve, just lasso to select them all. X marks the spot, so Option X unmarks the spot, I guess you would say. So Option X will clear in and out marks. That's the first keyboard shortcut. That's really good to know. Now, after that's done, we just need to get these to a timeline. We're going to start with the video clips. I'm going to create a new timeline to do that. So just select in the bin area. So we've got that's pre-selected. Command N or Control N on Windows will give us the contextual menu to create a new timeline. I'll hit type in sync map is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to change the audio track type here to mono because normally with sync sound I'm working with mono channels. Hit create, and before I actually throw these down onto the timeline based off the time code, I want you to pay attention to one thing, and that's under the edit menu, because this is a new default, I think changed in 20 something, and that's under the edit options at the very bottom, and it's this setting called automatically create tracks on edit. For this to work like you probably want automatically create tracks on edit selected. What this means is, like, let's say you have 10 channels of audio. It could just be from an OBS video game recording or something. If you want to get all your audio channels down here to your timeline, you probably want that on. Now, there's a lot of times you want it off too. If you want to limit, especially if you're editing from like one timeline to another timeline, you might want that off. For right now, let's leave that on. Now, to get these to our timeline, we're going to select our clips in our media pool, shift to select a group of them. That's how I did that. And then I will right click. I'll say insert clips to ... By the way, this is not really an insert. It's more like an overwrite if you're coming from another app. So I would call it overwrite selected clips to. And we're going to say timeline using timecode. And what's going to happen is it's going to stick these down on the timeline based off of those blue track headers that are selected down there. So you see next to the red ones on the far left, it says they're blue. It says video 1, A1 down to A4. Once I select this, they're pasted down here or they're edited to the timeline. You can't see them, but you can see in this viewer that, yeah, something got edited down here. Hit Z to fit that. To find them, just the down arrow key will get you there. And essentially what's happened is we have source timecode on all of these, and it's placed this source timecode onto the exact frame of the timeline timecode. So timeline timecode and source timecode match. In fact, you can double check that if I come through over here, and you can see this on-screen viewer for the timecode. This is 9:31:11. That's the source timecode of all those audio and video tracks. Same over here on the timeline tracks. If you don't see this window, I love to have this open a lot. It's under the 3-dot options menu called Show Timecode Overlays. All right. We haven't done a whole lot other than if I zoom out, you can see the timecode breaks from when the camera was on to when the camera was not on or when it was not recording. And this is really valuable on a long day shoot because you can see when they took a break. You can also see in script notes, script supervisor notes, hey, at say at 9:35:23 something great happened, well, you can have a marker for that and you can reference that. But for us today, we just want to use this so that we can see everything from like a bird's eye view and get our audio down here next. So to do that, I actually don't want this 4-channel audio. I just want to show you how you could actually pull it down. So to remove the audio, you'd think you would just select like this. Unfortunately, you don't do that because they're linked. Well, actually, sometimes it's nice that they're linked, but in this case, I don't want those linked. But rather than unlinking these with the chain link icon, what I'll do instead, Option, delete, those are gone. So now what I want to do is take these audio files from the externally recorded audio, get these down here on the timeline so that this source timecode also lines up with the timeline timecode using the same thing as before. Just make sure your blue patch here is set to the track where you want them to land. A1 is perfect for me. So I'll just shift select those. I will right click, insert selected clips to timeline using timecode. Boom. There we go. Now, at this point, what are we, 8 minutes into this tutorial? You're wondering, why the heck did you just not do this in the media pool to begin with? And the reason why is the sync would be off. So if you didn't know this, you can just batch select these in the media pool, right click, say AutoSync audio using timecode, and call it a day. However, let's take a look at the beginning of this. Let's see. Well, let's just use the first clip. So the slate closes. The sound of the clap should happen when it actually closes visually, right?
Take one, action.
Let's move in closer. Let's see this a little bit closer. I'm going to zoom into the viewer here too. Back it up with the arrow keys. So we got a problem. The audio happened, even though these are in sync with timecode, the audio is happening before the visual. So we need to fix this. The reason I think this happens is because it's hard to encode video, so it takes a little bit longer to do it. But what I want to do is I need to move these audio clips because they will probably be consecutively off by the same number of frames. I need to move these on the timeline down a little bit. So to move these down on the timeline, I'll just lasso select those. So I'm getting a few of them. And then I'm going to use either the comma key if I need to move the audio backwards, which is not what I want to do. I want to move it forward. So I'm going to use the period key, which is right next to the comma key. Those are your nudge keys to go one frame at a time. So the period key is what I'm looking for. I'll nudge one frame, and then we'll step this with the arrow keys to see if we're in sync. That's pretty good. Sometimes I suggest maybe you go 2 to see how that does, so maybe go 1 more. And that actually might even be better, to be honest, because the motion blur is stopped. By this time, it kind of makes sense that the audio would go to your ears. Either way, it's 1 or 2. You make the call on it. I'm going to say it's 2 for this tutorial today. Now that those are set up, we're going to take a look at how we actually use match frame with endpoints to use AutoSync. For this section, there's going to be 2 keyboard shortcuts I probably suggest you set up to be more efficient. And so I'm going to go open up my keyboard customization up over here. And the 2 that I want to make sure you have assigned to something, one is going to be AutoSync. And I have mine set to Control S. And then the other one, maybe as a preset, I'm not sure. And it's called Find in Media Pool. And I have it set to Option F. That might be the default. If it is, sorry, I just wasted your time. But either way, the way this is going to work, I like to have my 2 monitor views up over here. If you don't see both, it's because you don't have enough screen resolution, or this button up here in the right has been changed to single viewer. So make sure you're in dual viewer mode. And if you lose it, just close the other panels to get you more real estate. And we'll start with placing our playhead of the timeline on frame 1. So I'm just using the up and down arrows to go to the very first frame of it. I'm hitting F for match frame. That's also known as this button right here, right next to your mark in and out on the timeline. So F or click that button. And that essentially calls up this clip on the exact frame in the source monitor. Then I'm going to mark an I for endpoint on this clip. And then I need to find this in the media pool. That's what I set to Option or Alt F. So you see it's basically marked this into the media pool. There's our source timecode. If you're coming from Avid, this is probably very familiar to you. If you're not, welcome to professional editing. So now I want to do the same thing with the audio clip that's down here as well. So now that I have these synchronized, if I were to match frame to this specific frame, I'm selecting the clip down there, I'm hitting F to match frame, and I don't want the endpoint way over there. I want it set on the frame that I match frame to, so I for endpoint. And you can see that just highlighted my new updated endpoint in the media pool. I'm going to command click the audio clip for what I just marked my match frame to. And then I'm going to do my AutoSync command. Again, that's a right click option, but we set a keyboard shortcut to it. So it's AutoSync, AutoSync audio, so Control S. And rather than using timecode, thankfully, I think it was in DaVinci Resolve 20.1, they changed this so that you have more options here. We can choose to synchronize using in, and that's what I want to do. And I also want to keep the video metadata. And once I choose this, you'll notice also in the media pool, we now have synced audio. So there's externally recorded audio synchronized to this clip. And this can actually work with multiple technical trackees or multiple, if you have mixed pre's, any number of extra audio. It's just going to show you one of them in this list, but you could have lots of external lav packs synchronized this way. In fact, if you don't have timecode, this is a great way to synchronize as well, because you can synchronize on a timeline by right-clicking and saying auto-align clips using waveform. So just so you know, this goes way beyond just having a source timecode that might be off by a frame. But after that, it's honestly just rinse and repeat. I'll show you how fast this can go with keyboard shortcuts for these next 4 clips down here. So I will just come down to my timeline, hit the down arrow till I get to the next clip. There it is. F to match frame, I for endpoint, Option F to media pool. Okay. Now I am selecting the audio clip below it. F to match frame. Watch the endpoint skip, I for endpoint. And now that I've got an endpoint on this clip, which is 11A, command clicking that over there, Control S, endpoint, synchronize, boom. And I just keep going down the line. So here's my next clip, deselecting my audio, F to match frame, I for endpoint, Option F to select it in the media pool. Then down here, F to match frame the audio, I for endpoint. Now that I've got that new endpoint set, that's one of the advantages to using this instead of those actual markers to using endpoints, is markers limit you to, like I would have to clear the marker, whereas I don't have to clear this endpoint because I only have one endpoint. Just a reason if you're wondering why are you not using a marker instead of an endpoint mark. So I'll just command click these, Control S, automatically sync using endpoint, sync. And I've just got 2 more to go. Just come down here, F to match frame, I for endpoint, Option F to select it in the viewer, selecting my audio clip, F to match frame, new endpoint right there, and then I will command select it in the media pool, Control S, select by endpoint, this last little short clip here, F to match frame, in, select in the media pool, select the audio clip, F to match frame, new endpoint, and then I just select this one more time, Control S, select sync by, and that's it. So now all of these clips right here are synchronized to the external audio. You can go look at the clip attributes, and you'll notice on the audio tab, they're synced to Batman, which is what I call that device. And I could put these all on a timeline together. If I just want to say, create a new timeline using selected clips without all of those gaps in there, you'll see we've got perfectly synced audio. You'll know it's separately synced audio because it has a little circle next to it. So that circle means there's external audio. And let's see if hopefully we're in sync now. There we go. So no longer am I waiting for my mouth to catch up to the audio that was already in sync. And the reason I suggest you do it this way, there are other ways of modifying timecode, is because this is going to work anytime you need to work with people in other software or in other Resolve projects that didn't have the timecode updated manually separately. What I mean by that is some folks might tell you, why don't you just go into the audio clip, right clip, clip attributes, go to timecode here and change the offset. Well, the reason is because as soon as you do that, that clip is no longer valid except for in that project or in that timeline. So if you reload it on something else, it's going to be offline. only Resolve in that project knows that you've changed that. So in this case, this setup here, we've not changed anything about the source clips. We've just adjusted sync perfectly using endpoints.
Thank you so much for sticking around today. I really appreciate you. My name is Chadwick. The channel is called Creative Video Tips, where I teach all things about DaVinci Resolve. And because there's always so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video. Tail slate.